Hello Toastmasters and welcome to our next video in the new member journey series. We are going to be now covering off on the member stage of the new member journey, which is one of the big barriers that a lot of our clubs face when it comes to signing up new members and increasing their overall health and vitality. Because what we often find in many clubs is that they will have a lot of guests walk through the doors. They'll come along to a meeting, they'll seemingly enjoy themselves, they'll say nice things, and then they'll walk away forever. And they will never join our clubs. And that's an issue. That's a big problem because so many people have the potential there to sign up and become members if they realize what Toastmasters can do for them, and they're missing out. Because oftentimes it's something within the club, maybe there's no follow-up, maybe there's something within the meeting itself that puts them off. But that is a challenge that we're going to try and solve here through the tools and the principles that we're going to talk about in this particular session. So the member session is the penultimate session, or phase rather, of the new member journey. It's the part where we encourage a guest who has come to our club to sign up on the dotted line and become a member of our club. It is not the final step, however, because the final step is what happens after that. What do we do to set them off right? And we'll talk about that in the next video. But for this stage, we're all about talking, okay, we have a guest who has come to a meeting. They're either physically in the room or they've just been. What do we do now as a club to encourage them to sign up as a member? And so to start that off, and the first one should not surprise anyone, it's that first impressions count. So to make an excellent positive impression on a guest whenever they come to a club, which means that every club meeting has to be on top form. It has to be a positive experience for every guest that ever comes anytime. Because it only takes one bad meeting where you have a lot of guests and suddenly none of them join. And while that might sound like a bit of a strain, when you think about it, if you're delivering a positive experience for your guests every meeting, that's a positive experience for your members as well. And that's what encourages your members to stay. If every meeting is a great one, if every meeting is full of laughter and learning and engagement, that's the type of vibe that guests really flock to and makes them want to be a part of the action and be a member of your club. But it doesn't just start at the club meeting. It starts before the meeting, and we talked about it in the prospect stage and the guest stages about what you do to make that experience a positive one for your guests. But it also carries through after as well, because so many times guests won't necessarily make up their mind on the first meeting and they'll walk out at the end of the night or the end of the day or whatever it is that you have your meetings, and then they'll never be heard from again. And that's sad because the guest might have been interested in joining, but they've never heard from the club. They feel rejected. They feel like the club may not necessarily want them as a member, and they never come back. And we don't want that to happen. And so it's all about treating your guests like royalty the whole way through the journey, even after they join, which we'll talk about in the next video. And so to keep tabs on that, of course, use those tools from the guest session. So the prospective member tracker, keep tabs on all of your guests and make sure that you follow up with them on a regular or semi-regular basis to keep in touch, to let them know that you're still thinking of them, that they're still welcome and that they can come back to a meeting anytime and check you out again. Within the meeting itself, or even after, the key thing is to help guests make that decision because, again, they are in the meeting, possibly a little overwhelmed. They're still trying to work out whether Toastmasters is for them. And so to provide guests with some information, whether it's a guest packet or something else, to basically help take away some of that fog, to clear some of that indecision, and to make the decision an easier one for them. And so a sample guest packet might have a fee schedule, it might have some information about Toastmasters, it'll have a membership form in it, but something like just information to help guests make the choice because they need reasons to join Toastmasters. And the more reasons you can give them to join and the more you can take away those reasons not to join, the more likely it is that's going to happen. And one of the ways you can do that is by assigning a buddy So a member to buddy up with one of the guests. So seat the guest next to a member who can sort of guide them through that and answer their questions throughout the meeting. So whether it's, what are the timing lights for? What are table topics? Why is everyone clapping? Some of those simple things that we as members take for granted, but as guests, it's completely new and it may not make a lot of sense initially. So having someone who can explain the mechanics of what Toastmasters is, but more importantly, to also share their story of why they joined Toastmasters and what they've gotten out of the experience so far. That sort of testimonial can help tremendously when trying to sell a guest on joining up as a member. And so having those buddies looking after members takes a huge load off the VP membership. And it also means that everyone gets that personal attention, which is really important when you're trying to, again, encourage your guests to sign up as members. And then the last principle here, and probably the key one, is to close the sale, because we see a lot of clubs where guests come in and they're sort of allowed to walk out again without ever having been invited to join. And that's critical, because sometimes that's all that's required is the guest is waiting to be asked to join. And if they don't get asked, they think that the club doesn't want them. And so always making sure to invite guests to either join or at least come back. Because again, they may not necessarily have made up their mind after one meeting, but inviting them back for another time just to get it clear in their mind and to again, build up those reasons in their head to join Toastmasters can be really powerful. Once the guest has made the decision to join, and we're going to assume that the vast majority of our guests make that decision to join, what happens next? Because there is still a number of steps between a guest wanting to join the club and actually being a member. So the first thing to remember is that you don't have a member until they have signed the membership application form and paid their money. And as a club, our goal is to make that process as simple and as painless as possible. Oftentimes, the guest may sign the form, fill in the application in the meeting or just after the meeting, and they might pay separately. And if the club treasurer or the VP membership or whoever it is in your club that's responsible for this part of the process isn't on the ball and isn't following up, then you might have a guest who signed the form and thinks that they're a member, but they haven't been given the details of how to pay. And in that situation, they're not a member. And again, the more or the longer that gap between signing and paying takes, the less professional your club looks, the easier it is for that guest to back out of deciding to join. And again, it creates a bad impression about how organized your club is and how on top of things your executive really are. So that's the key, is to make sure that you have someone who is following up on the form and the money and making sure that both of those come in. And at that point, then the member can be submitted to Toastmasters International as a member, and we can start the onboarding process to bring them up to speed on what happens next, inductions, orientations, and all of those things that we'll talk about in the next video. So tools, because again, we have a guest in our meeting. What happens? What can we use to help them make that decision to join us as a member? So we have a couple of tools here. So one is a sample guest packet. It's critically important that guests are given information at the meeting, that they are handed, whether it's some brochures or some information about the club, whatever it is, that they're handed something to help them just make that decision easier. And also, again, it reflects well on the organization and on the club to have something professional to present to a guest and sort of say, yes, we know what we're doing, we're organized, we can provide you with a professional, valuable experience because we've got our joining process or our guest process under control, so we have everything else under control. It just adds to the credibility of the club when trying to convince a member to join. And so District 69 has put together, again, compiled some Toastmasters International documents and a few others to just suggested documents that you could include in a packet to give to guests. And again, if you have documents of your own in your own club, feel free to use those instead. But if you don't have guest packets or guest information already, this is a great starting point that you can just print out, put in a packet, and hand to a guest, every guest, whenever they walk in to your club. The second is a buddy checklist. Again, this is a District 69 template. It's a simple checklist of items for a buddy, a member that's been assigned to look after a guest, for them to sort of work through with that guest throughout the meeting. So things to explain about how the meeting works, how Toastmasters works at a very high level, because we don't want to overwhelm guests too much. And again, just reminding our members to talk about their story and to keep building that case in the guest's mind why they want to join. The third set of tools is for those guests that don't sign up immediately, because a lot of guests don't. They want to take some time to mull it over. And it's a follow-up email. So an email template to thank the guest for coming along to the meeting, to invite them back, and again, to keep the enthusiasm and the momentum going. Now, these are simple templates, again, copy and paste with a little bit of tweaking, but it helps with the administration enormously to have a standard set of professional responses that you can use and not have to type out everything all the time. And so these are 3 tremendously useful tools that you can implement within your club to help improve the professionalism and the effectiveness of this stage of your new members' journeys. And again, if you have multiple guests come through your club and you're able to convert more of them using these tools and using the principles that we talked about, then you'll have a huge flood of new members into your club. You'll be signing up new members left, right, and center, and that's a fantastic thing. Now, it doesn't stop there. We've still got one more phase of the new member journey to go, which is what happens immediately after they join. So stick around for the next video. We're going to be running through the Toastmaster phase of the new member journey. Thank you for listening to our member video, and I look forward to chatting with you on the other side. So thank you, and see you in the next video.